Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another video I'm going to be bringing you today, in which I'm going to be asking a question about a character not only from Dragon Ball Super, but Dragon Ball Z as well, and that character is Future Trunks. And a question that I'm going to be asking not only impacts Future Trunks, but really much of this franchise as a whole, and that is, was Future Trunks' character ruined by Dragon Ball Super? And what I mean by this is that if we look at Future Trunks' character and we do an analysis of who he is, and then we basically boil it down, what we boil it down to is that Future Trunks' character exists so that he can defend his timeline, and so that he can gain the means to become more powerful to eliminate threats which arrive there, and also in the process go to the past and kind of protect everyone there and prevent what happened from his time to additionally happening there. Now, defending the main timeline was more of the case in Dragon Ball Z, as we did see when he initially arrived during the androids in the Cell Saga, as Trunks not only wanted to prevent that from happening in the present, but also gain the means so that he could defeat the androids in his own future. And then everything kind of bubbled from there with Cell arriving, everyone finding out about that, finding out about the different timelines, so on and so forth. But essentially, it all boiled down to Trunks really wanting to defend his own future. In Dragon Ball Z, at least, we did see Trunks arrive at this conclusion, as he did in fact prevent the destruction of the main timeline, by the androids, but additionally, he saved his own future when he did become powerful enough through training with his father, so that he could in fact defeat the androids in his own time. And due to his own actions and his coming to the present, he was able to also ensure that Goku did not die of his heart virus and would inevitably go on to train with Gohan, who would eventually be able to defeat Perfect Cell and end the terror of the androids in the present forever. And when Trunks in fact did kill the androids and Cell in his timeline, everything seemed to come to a rightful conclusion. Everything was saved in his time, everything was saved in the present, and essentially that was kind of Trunks' happily ever after. It seemed like that was the end of his story, the end of his arc. Even though it would have been cool to see him come back, it was still pretty much everything he set out to accomplish was accomplished, and all the loose ends were pretty much tied up. Now, of course, more threats came to the present, and people often wondered what exactly was going on in Future Trunks' timeline. Why didn't Majin Buu come when he came to the Earth? So on and so forth. But everything seemed pretty much fine in the Future Trunks timeline, aside from that, until Dragon Ball Super. And as we saw in Dragon Ball Super, Future Trunks, in fact, did face Babidi and Deborah, and prevent the coming of Majin Buu in his timeline, although at a great cost, which was the death of the Kaioshin, who was helping him, the Supreme Kai from Universe 7. However, then we saw the coming of Black, and basically this kind of reset everything that Trunks' arc had built up to at that point. Essentially, that Trunks' arc and his story had to continue once again, had to kind of go through that one ring cycle once again, and we saw essentially that Trunks' future, was not safe anymore, and he once again had to go through the similar cycle from the Cell Saga. He had to once again go to the past so that he could gain the means and the strength in order to go back to the future and defeat this threat who had come to his present, and that was pretty much his whole story arc at the time. However, the problem with that is that flash to the end of Dragon Ball Super's Future Trunks arc, we see that Trunks significantly underperformed in this area and rather failed to actually save his people. Now, the entire Future Trunks arc at that point was still following kind of similar motivations to Trunks having in the Dragon Ball Z arc from the Cell Saga, in which we saw that Trunks was trying to gain the means to become more powerful. He was training with his father so that once again he would be able to become powerful enough to defeat this character in his future, and really everything seemed to build up and until that point, up until episode 66, which was kind of the climax, although the next episode is pretty much the climax of the arc. In everything in episode 66, everyone else failed except seemingly future Trunks. And not only did he, use his own power to fight Zamasu, however, he also used the power of all the people of his timeline. All of the people came together and they donated their energy in something akin to, say, a Genki Dama, and then Goku and Vegeta gave him their power as well. So even though it was all rushed, even though it wasn't really, as built up as well as it could have been, everything still kind of built until that point, and everything still led to future Trunks seemingly defeating the main villain of the arc, which was really his own villain after all, despite all the things that Black had done to the other alternate versions of Goku and Vegeta and all these other people, with killing future Bulma, for example. It was still future Trunks' villain. However, as we saw with episode 67 and the true climax of the future Trunks arc, every single thing that had built up until that point was essentially wasted and pointless because Zamasu did not in fact die at future Trunks' hands. Vegeta didn't defeat him, Goku didn't defeat him, Vegeta did not defeat him. It all came down to Goku hitting a button, basically the easy button, and having this character who probably is omnipotent show up and wipe out everything in an instant, and destroying his entire timeline in the present. Now, of course, before this point, Zamasu did kill everyone on Earth, and that really did come down to also being another issue because, again, Trunks' whole thing was, let's protect the people, and then they all died, So, pretty much every single person that Trunks had protected up until that point, even during the Cell Saga in Dragon Ball Z, that whole arc was pretty much completely undone by the ending of episode 67, in which Zeno just wiped everything out in an instant and Zamasu killed all the living. But something else we have to keep in mind is not only did Zeno kill everything in the existence of the normal universe, so let's just say, all the living physical beings, Zeno also seemingly destroyed everything in the existency in the timeline of the future Trunks, History of Trunks timeline. So, essentially, not only did he destroy Universe 7, but he destroyed every single Universe 1 through 12 and their afterlives. So, essentially, all the characters who were in the afterlife, future Gohan, future Goku, future Bulma, who had just died in front of his eyes, everyone is now non-existent because, as we know in Dragon Ball, if you die second time when you're already dead, you're gone forever. So essentially, Zeno not only destroyed future Trunks' timeline, but everyone he ever knew and loved. So them going to this other timeline that they're kind of creating for no reason out of nowhere is entirely pointless because everyone he's going to be spending the rest of eternity with, I guess, is not real versions of the people he knew. They're just alternate versions. They're not the same people. It's not, he's not going to, when he dies, he's not going to go see the real future Gohan. He's just going to see an alternate version. He's never ever going to be reunited with those people. And so essentially he did fail in his mission and his entire character arc. So Dragon Ball Super pretty much undid everything that future Trunks accomplished up until this point in Dragon Ball Z. So it makes me wonder again if that was, basically what they built up future Trunks' character to be. If his entire character was, let me defend my future, let me become, the person who will be strong enough to constantly fight these threats, and then he actually did, but then in the current, Dragon Ball Super, they wiped that all away. Does that kind of ruin his character as a whole? Is his character kind of pointless now because no longer does he really have some true timeline, his own timeline to defend? No longer has he had anything that he's truly accomplished because it's all just been wiped away in an instant? Is his character totally ruined as a result because everything he set out to accomplish is completely gone and he has nothing really left to do or accomplish as a character? Sure, he can come back to Dragon Ball Super if they write him into it, and he could be awesome, and he could fight, and he could do this and that, but unless they take the Super Dragon Balls, for instance, the ones that are in the present that should still exist, because Zamasu only destroyed alternate versions of them, and they use those Super Dragon Balls to to wish his timeline back with no Zamasu, with all those people back to life. Pretty much there is no point to future Trunks' character other than to show up and be a badass. And when there is no purpose to a character, when it's pretty much completely hollow at that point, then I feel like there is no point to him and he's essentially been ruined. And it's kind of a shame. Normally you would say that a follow-up to a series or a sequel never really ruins the original. However, when you think about it, since this is a direct sequel to Dragon Ball Z, and this is the exact same future Trunks, then that does mean that everything he set out to accomplish and everything he did accomplish is now completely ruined because it's the exact same character in the exact same future. Sure, Dragon Ball Z, when you see that arc, is still great. You still see that everything ends happily for Trunks, but now in Dragon Ball Super, you know that everything Trunks just accomplished in the previous series completely pointless and really doesn't add up to much in the end, except for the main timeline, because really when you think about it now, all future Trunks really did was to make it so Goku stuck around so that he could be the main character of the series. And for people whose favorite character is Goku, I'm sure that you're really happy about that, but if every single thing in Dragon Ball Super all boils down to everything has only been about Goku and Goku only matters and everything is just about making him stronger and making him better, then honestly, is it really worth kind of diminishing and making everything else before it essentially pointless in the end, just to build up a character who's already been built up for 30 years and he's already been the main character as it is? But I feel like that's pretty much what Dragon Ball has essentially become at this point, especially Dragon Ball Super. And hopefully we'll be able to see other characters actually built up and accomplish something in the end, rather than building everything up just to have a wacky ending where a floating toddler destroys universes just so he can hang out with himself, because that's really what we needed the ending of the Future Trunks arc to be. But we'll have to wait and see for the next arc and what's really going to happen with this series. So let me know your own thoughts down below if you think that perhaps future Trunks' character has kind of been ruined by Dragon Ball Super, if his arc even matters anymore since everything he's already worked for no longer exists, or if you're just, I guess, enjoying the ride as it is, because I know some people are still really liking everything that happened in the ending of the last arc. Again, I don't personally really understand how you can enjoy that, but, I'm sure you guys will let me know down below in the comments section, so as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
And you better subscribe!